and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Rhonda Barovsky, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. David Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new teen therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. David is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David, and welcome to all our listeners to podcast 142. Today's going to be an unusual, kind of different podcast in that I'm going to be doing personal work with David.
Right, and I'm very much looking forward to it and appreciate your offering to do this. And one of the ideas we have in teaching team therapy that most of you have heard about already, but in case you haven't, it's the idea of physician heal thyself, that you have to do your own personal work to develop a really deep grasp of whatever form of psychotherapy you're trying to give to others. And the idea too is, that you should be able to heal yourself first before you would try to heal another person. And there's a number of reasons for that, but one of them is that water can't rise higher than its source. And so if you're trying to help someone with, in this case, performance anxiety or self-doubt or feeling like you're not good enough, and I'm sure a lot of you listening now have had those feelings of anxiety and beating up on yourself and thinking you don't measure up. And if you've healed that thing within yourself, then you have a much deeper message to bring to your patients. You could say, I've been there. I know what that's like. I know how awful it is, and I can show you the way out of the woods as well. So that's really what we're up to, and we're hopeful that all of you, in listening to Rhonda and her courage in volunteering to show her own humanness, will give you folks greater courage and a little bit of an enlightenment as well. Does that size it up, would you say?
That sounds very good.
Okay. So we're going to start out here with the T equals testing, and I just asked Rhonda to fill out the brief mood survey. How are you feeling right now? And the depression score was 3 out of 20, which is very minimal. You're just feeling somewhat sad and somewhat discouraged and somewhat low on self-esteem.
But I have to say that's how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
The moment in time that we're working on is when I listened to the two social anxiety podcasts, and if you had asked me right then, my depression would have been a lot higher.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. There's no suicidal urges. The anxiety is a little higher. It's 8. You're feeling moderately anxious, moderately worrying about things, moderately tense, moderately nervous. That score also goes from 0 to 20, so a high score would be 18 or 19, but an 8 is, that's moderate anxiety.
And again, that's because I've listened to those podcasts 3 times, so I've I've reduced my anxiety a little bit.
Yeah, it probably would have been up to 18 or something.
It definitely would have.
And then the anger is just minimal, 2 out of 20. You're feeling a little bit frustrated and a little bit annoyed.
And that would be anger turned toward myself, not towards anyone else.
Yeah. And that's a relief, because if it was anger toward me, I don't know what I'd do.
Yeah, that would be hard.
We have a new happiness scale that's the exact opposite of the depression scale. So instead of measuring depression, you measure feelings of happiness and joy, and it goes from 0 to 20, just like the depression scale, but in this case a high number is good, and yours is 16 out of 20, which is pretty darn good. And on 2 of the items, motivated and feeling pleasure and satisfaction in life, it's extremely true, the highest possible, but it's a little low. It's only moderate on self-esteem. And it's a lot, but not extremely, on feeling happy and joyful and hopeful and optimistic. And on the relationship satisfaction scale, you assessed your relationship with David, and that was 30 out of 30, which is excellent. So we'll look at that again. And could I take a look at you brought in a daily mood log, and sometimes in a therapy session, your client or patient, whatever, or colleague in this case, will bring in a partially filled out mood log, and that gives you kind of a head start and also helps you with empathy. And we'll have to do the emotions piece here in just a second. But the upsetting event was listening to the social anxiety podcast that we just did, and then you're negative. And I think you didn't like something about the way you were sounding on the podcast.
Right.
And you said, I sound so stupid, inarticulate, and inaccurate. And then how much did you believe that at the time?
100.
100%. And then I made a gross overgeneralization, and that's when you said that diagnostic labels are meaningless. And then you got kind of shocked and thinking you had made too strong of a statement there. And then a third negative thought was, I don't know a lot of answers. Was that 100 too?
Yes, they're all 100 basically.
Oh, they're all 100. I sound like an idiot. And I don't know perceived perfectionism.
I didn't know. Well, you explained it to me, so I knew it then.
Oh,
but I didn't know it before.
Oh, that's cool. I stumbled over the possible reframe and...
the positive reframe.
The positive reframe. And I stumbled, I guess, on identify the distortions.
I did.
Okay. And then I fumbled with other responses. And number 8, Fabrice was never wrong.
Fabrice never made mistakes.
Never made mistakes. And 9, I laugh inappropriately, like when we were doing the individual downward arrow. We were role playing that, and and you said something very poignant and sad, and I went, "Oh, great!" Oh, I see. So I laughed.
When I listened, I thought, "Oh, what a dumb thing!" So my tone of voice was so stupid.
Oh, okay, okay. Arugula will take away my level 4. Oh, Angela, my level
Angela's
4
going to listen.
Certification as a team therapist. Yeah, she was calling earlier today. And say,
Rhonda doesn't deserve that certification level.
We just want to give you an advantage. I said I'd mention to you in our session, so it's off in the blow. And number 11, I make the same comments over and over. That was 100, and I sound like I have a verbal tick. I got another 100.
Yeah.
And although we laugh about it, I've had the pain from all kinds of things, performance anxiety and screwing up at my teaching and criticisms, and so we laugh about it. It's funny on one level, but on another level, it feels incredibly painful.
It does.
When you're thinking, let's just do the emotions, and you can circle.
Okay.
Circle them. In fact, I'm going to get one of those, a brief mood survey for myself, so I can be writing down while we're working. Sorry, apologize for the clunking of the equipment. But I've got one here. So let's look at this first category. When you were feeling this way,
I filled out the thoughts pretty soon, recently after I.
Yeah, right.
Close.
And then let's see, what were the emotions at that time?
I felt depressed and down and unhappy.
And how strong was that?
I'd say 100.
100. And then how about the next category, anxious?
I felt anxious, worried, panicky, nervous, frightened, 100. I felt bad and ashamed and remorseful. Everything is 100.
Guilty also, or not? Just those 3.
Yeah,
100.
just those 3. I don't think I felt 2. I felt inferior and worthless and inadequate and defective and incompetent. 100.
About lonely, unloved, unwanted, rejected, alone, abandoned.
I think I had perceived rejection.
Yeah.
And unloved. That's probably 90. I'll give myself a break.
90, okay.
Embarrassed, foolish, humiliated, self-conscious. That was 100. And I felt hopeless, discouraged, I felt all pessimistic and despairing. That was 100. Frustrated and defeated and stuck was 100. And I probably felt angry directed at myself, and upset, and annoyed, and that was 100. Actually, there was another thought that I didn't write down, and that thought is David's going to regret asking me to be the host.
There was something I wanted to talk to you about.
I forgot to write.
Going to regret having me as host. Okay, and what was the percent on that?
100.
Okay, and let me borrow this back because I didn't write your thoughts down. So let me thank you again, and say how much I appreciate not only your hosting, but taking this tremendous step of sharing your own humanness with me and with our many listeners. I've had so much social anxiety myself at times in my life. I know how painful it can be, and obviously your emotions here, they're depressed and anxious and ashamed and inadequate, 100%. I mean, it doesn't get more intense than that, and feeling kind of rejected and embarrassed, just hopeless, discouraged, frustrated, angry, upset, about as severe as can be. Tell me what that was like. Tell me about that.
Well, it's fun to sit here and talk to you about the podcast while we're doing them. And then when I listened to the 2 podcasts on social anxiety, all I heard were mistakes I made, fumbles. I'm doing it right now where I start to think of a word and then I wish I said another word, so I stop in mid-syllable and say something else, and I say yep and and it's right. It's just these little monosyllable, meaningless sounds, and I thought, oh my God, why am I doing that? I said, Fabrice never did that. Fabrice was really cool. I'm kind of anxious.
He has that French accent.
He has that cool French accent. Yeah. He's always referring people to different books and reminding people of different theorists that, and I feel like you ask me a question, now Rhonda will explain that, and I think I probably know the answer, but I go right into kind of freezing because I'm so nervous about getting the answer wrong.
Mm-hmm. And then what am I afraid of? Here we can do, just for teaching purpose, a little what-if technique, downward arrow technique. So the idea is I might get it wrong or something? Was that the thought?
Yeah, I will get it wrong.
I will get it wrong. And then we're going to just put a little downward arrow underneath that. We have 3 directions we can go in: the individual downward arrow, the interpersonal downward arrow, or the what-if technique. And always also keeping in mind the hidden emotion technique. We have those 4 uncovering techniques. And you can mix and match to a certain degree, but let's say that you're on the podcast and you get it wrong. Even now, let's say you get something wrong. What would that mean to you? Why would that be upsetting to you?
Because it'll show what a fraud I am.
Put that down. It will show what a fraud I am. And if any of you listeners want to participate, you can get a piece of paper and a pencil, just turn off, or a pen, and turn off the podcast until you're set up with a paper and pen. And then write down the first negative thought of Rhonda's, I will get it wrong, and then put a downward arrow under it. And then under the downward arrow, you put her second thought. If I get it wrong, it will show what a fraud I am, and I will put a new downward arrow under it. And let's assume that's true. What would it mean to you? Why would that be upsetting to you if it turned out that you were, in fact, a fraud?
Well, then I don't deserve to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to be a small group leader. I don't deserve to be a therapist. I don't deserve.
Okay.
It just encompasses. It just spreads its wings in every direction of my life.
Okay, so I don't deserve to be here, to be a therapist or a teacher,
Right.
and so forth. So
Right.
you write that down, and then we can generate another thought by asking a question like this. See, what you just came up with is kind of a should statement. I shouldn't be here if I'm a fraud, and I shouldn't be a therapist. I shouldn't try to be a teacher. So let's assume that's all true, that you're a fraud and that you don't deserve to be any of these things, but you are. And so what then? What are you the most afraid of? We'll turn it into a kind of a what-if technique. What's the worst that could happen?
Well, everyone will know I'm a fraud.
Okay.
Everyone will know I'm a fraud.
Put that down. Everyone will know I'm a fraud. Okay. That sounds good. I love that one. And then put a downward arrow under that.
And no one will like me.
Oh, okay. Put that down. Then no one will
like me or respect me.
Or like or respect me. And then let's assume that all of that's true. And when you're doing a downward arrow, again, just from a teaching point of view, you want to keep saying respectfully. You don't want to say it sarcastically, but of course, no one would like to have everyone thinking you're a fraud or not liking or respecting you or judging you or something. But if that were true, would that be upsetting to you? What would that mean to you?
If no one liked me or respected me?
Yeah.
Then
why would that be upsetting? And again, as a therapist, you have to keep asking this question, because in your mind, you might be thinking, well, that's obvious that people would be upset if no one liked or respected them.
Well, then I'll be rejected and I'll be all alone.
Okay, put that down. I'll be respected.
Rejected.
Oh yeah, rejected. Rejected and respected, it's all the same from a Buddhist perspective. I'll be rejected and all alone.
I'll be rejected and all alone.
And then
I'll be ostracized.
Yeah, I'll be alone and ostracized. So
like a leper.
Yeah, like a leper. A leper. And then what? Is that bad?
Yeah, that's
why would that be upsetting to you? What would that?
If I would be ostracized like a leper?
Yeah.
Like I walk in the room and people say, "Oh, there's Rhonda to turn over."
Yeah. There's Rhonda the leper. She stutters on podcasts.
She's such a fraud. Well, no, I open my mouth, I'll say something, and people will kind of roll their eyes and
and then
think,
if this was all true.
Idiot.
Would that be negative? See, another way to think about this, if you're a therapist and trying to figure out how to do this with your patients and clients. And oh, by the way, we'll have to have a podcast on the results of the podcast survey.
Oh, that would be great.
Because they were so fantastic.
Well, if you still want me to do it at the end of this podcast.
Well, with the new host, I'll do that. Where were we? Oh yeah,
I'll be ostracized like a leper.
You can call this the man from Mars or the woman from Mars technique, and you can say, well, imagine I'm from Mars and I just don't understand how things work on the surface of the Earth. So I have to ask you some questions that seem kind of silly, but is there something negative? See, we don't have this concept on Mars. So if everyone, all human beings, I guess, reject you and you're all alone and ostracized, then is there something negative about that? Is that a bad thing, are you saying?
Yeah, that's a really bad thing.
And then why would that be?
Because I'll be lonely.
Okay.
And I won't have a community, and people will judge me negatively.
Well, those are two different things. So let's first put people will judge me.
And I'll judge myself.
Well, let's ignore that for the moment. But
okay.
People will judge me, and then I'll have no community. I'll have no community. And can we add, and therefore will be obligated to be lonely all the time?
Yes.
Okay, add that, and we'll be lonely all the time. So I don't know if you have a list of the 23 self-defeating beliefs, and
I don't have them right in front of me.
I might have a list here, and we could publish it with the show notes, perhaps, because the purpose of the downward arrow technique is to get at the self-defeating beliefs that are under the surface. And let me just see. Oh yeah, I found the list of 23 self-defeating beliefs. And so what you do is you just look at them with your patient. When I had an office, I had these on the shelf. I would have 100 of my favorite forms and tools photocopied in stacks, and I grab a list of the self-defeating beliefs. And you folks too can do this as an exercise, and if you look at the show notes, you can try to identify Rhonda's self-defeating beliefs. And the way you do it is you review the list of downward arrow thoughts. So the downward arrow, and then you say, what are the self-defeating beliefs that are implied by these thoughts? So we start out, I'll get it wrong on a podcast, or I'll say something foolish, or screw up in some way on a podcast, and then that will show what a fraud I am. And if that's true, then I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to be a therapist. I don't deserve to be a team therapy teacher, and so forth. And then if that were true, then everyone will know that I'm a fraud. And then no one will like or respect me. Then I'll be rejected, and I'll be all alone and ostracized from the human race like a leper. And then, and in addition, people will judge me, and I'll have no community. So then I'll be obligated to feel lonely all the time. And then you look at the self-defeating beliefs, and see, these thoughts don't logically follow from each other.
They don't?
No. If you get something wrong, it doesn't follow that this shows what a fraud you are. So the self-defeating beliefs is the logic that connects one thought to the one below it. And so you look at the list of self-defeating beliefs like perfectionism, perceived perfectionism, achievement addiction, approval addiction. There's 23 of them, love addiction, fear of rejection, and so forth. And you circle all the ones that you think might apply. So we're going to just say to turn off the podcast on the count of 3, and then look at the show notes, the list of 23 self-defeating beliefs, and see how many you can identify. See if you can come up with 3, 4, 5 or more. And then when you're done, you can turn it back on, and you can listen to Rhonda and I identifying self-defeating beliefs. I think if you actually turn it off and do the exercise, you'll learn quite a bit. It'll be a real good podcast for you. And this makes no difference if you're a patient or a therapist or a general citizen. This is an exercise that you can all do. And learn from. You know, everyone can learn from this exercise. So I'll count 1, 2, 3. Turn it off now. And now, I presume you've turned it back on, or you never bothered to turn it off, either way. And now Rhonda and I will kind of see what self-defeating beliefs we can come up with. Which ones have you come up with so far?
Well, all 3 in the achievement section, perfectionism, perceived perfectionism, and achievement addiction. So
before we go ahead, those are great calls. The perfectionism is obvious, and it's at the core of an awful lot of depression and virtually all performance anxiety. It's the idea I have to be perfect, and kind of criticizing yourself for every failure, every error. What is perceived perfectionism, Rhonda?
That's when I think you need to see me as perfect, or other people need to perceive me as being perfect.
Yeah, and if you have flaws, then we're going to reject you and judge you and not want to hang.
Reject me if you don't see me as perfect.
Yeah. And then what you said, it's achievement addiction. What's achievement addiction?
Well, that what my worthwhileness depends on something that I've done, my achievements.
Yeah,
my performance.
You got to earn.
I have to earn acceptance from others.
Yeah, and your right to be happy, your right to be a human. Right. Now, what are some more that you found?
Fear of rejection.
Absolutely, and that's pretty obvious, right?
Right. I'll be rejected and all alone.
Yeah.
If you reject me, or it proves there's something wrong with me.
Yeah. Now, you skipped over approval addiction.
Approval addiction.
Do you think it's approval addiction?
Yes. That I need other people's approval to be worthwhile.
Yeah. And also a love addiction. If I'm not loved, then life is not worth living, or I can't be happy and fulfilled without being loved. Right?
Yes.
Yep. So if I don't have this community, then I can't feel happy and fulfilled. I need other people's love to feel happy and fulfilled. What others?
I think I'm going to have all 23.
Well, I don't think, but when you find one, you'll often find 5, 6, 8, even 10 more.
Well, I should always try to pleasing others. I should always try to please other people, even if I make myself miserable.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to beat up on myself because I've got to please David and all the people who are listening to the podcast.
I don't think it's conflict phobia.
No.
Self-blame.
Yeah, I'd have to say you're kind of blaming yourself and beating up on yourself. Absolutely.
And other blame because I'm worried so much about other people judging me.
But you're not saying, I don't think you're blaming other people.
Okay, good. That's okay. Another one I don't have. I don't think I have entitlement.
No.
And I don't think I have truth.
No.
Hopelessness. My problems can never be solved. I don't think I have the hopelessness. No. Worthlessness, inferiority. I'm basically worthless, defective, inferior to others. I think I have that a little.
Okay, we can circle that. We'll give it a 1/2.
Okay. Maybe it'll be more than that. I think there's some emotional perfectionism too, that I should always feel happy and confident and in control.
Yeah, right. I'm not allowed to feel anxious or insecure.
I don't think it's anger phobia.
No.
And I don't think it's emotophobia, where I should never feel any feeling.
Yeah.
Maybe it's perceived narcissism.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that David's going to be so judgmental.
David and everyone listening.
Well, perceived narcissism is if I criticize people, they can't take it. So we've got perceived perfectionism already.
So if I criticize someone, they won't be able to take it?
Yeah, they'll explode or reject me or something. That would be perceived narcissism.
Okay, I don't think I have that.
No.
Brush fire fallacy is that the world is full of clones and everybody thinks the same thing. And if one person looks down on me,
yes,
me.
exactly.
And I also think it's spotlight fallacy.
Yeah, you're in the spotlight here, and everyone's staring at you. Right. You've got to impress people, and put on a flawless performance.
I don't think it's magical thinking.
I don't think it's low frustration.
I don't think it's low frustration. It might be Superwoman.
Yeah,
I should always be strong and never weak.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
And does that ring true for you? Do you think you have these?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm not making that up.
And the nice thing about the downward arrow technique is you can tune into somebody's kind of the core beliefs under the surface that sometimes in conventional therapy you might be spending many months or even years to figure these things out. Now we'll skip for the moment the interpersonal downward arrow.
Yeah.
But let's just say where that would go to.
Okay.
Like you think that David is going to be one of the ones to judge you, right?
Yeah.
So what would that tell us about the kind of person David is? What's his role in the relationship? What's Rhonda's role? How would that feel? And what are the rules that connect these roles? Maybe we should do this formally.
It's up to you. Okay.
Well, I think personally, I think it's illuminating, and I happen to have the interpersonal downward arrow form here that makes it real easy, and I just think this would be really good training for people. Oh, by the way, let's keep our eye on on the clock. We started this at 2:06. We've been about at it about 30 minutes here so far. And well, maybe we should push ahead.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question as you're doing this. So we're kind of in the empathy stage of the TEAM team model.
Yeah.
Yet we're doing methods already.
Well, this came up actually in the Tuesday group last Tuesday because I did the interpersonal downward arrow, which worked great, by the way, during the empathy phase of a fellow who thought that we would reject him in the Tuesday group because he was showing his flaws, similar to your own.
I can see why you would do that particular method, because that can uncover other negative thoughts and self-defeating beliefs that you would then put on a daily mood log. But why would you do the interpersonal downward arrow?
Well, if you wanted to get at the interpersonal dynamic between you and the patient, or between the patient and some other person, that the interpersonal downward arrow is like psychoanalysis at warp speed. In psychoanalysis, you spend, the way I understand it, is 5 years free associating on the couch to figure out what your core conflict is between you and other people. Like you might have a core conflict like, my needs will never be filled in relationships. That could be a belief that someone has, and then it operates as a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I love someone, they won't love me back, type of thing. and so with the interpersonal downward arrow, you can figure out these core conflicts in 10 minutes rather than 5 years.
Oh, great.
And then you can also give the person an assignment to turn it around within 24 hours or something really. So it's like a psychoanalysis at warp speed. But because our time is short and we don't want to overwhelm people with too much, and we want to break this into 2 consecutive podcasts, why don't we skip the interpersonal downward arrow, and we can always come back to it sometime. This would be a perfect example for it, but
okay.
We've got enough stuff here. But I take it that it was just to see if I'm getting you, that you've had intense pain, which others can't see because you come across humorous, warm, chipper, friendly, having it together. But inside, you have about as intense negative feelings sometimes as a human being can experience. 100% in all of these categories, pretty much. And it's because you criticize yourself in this case for making mistakes or not being as spiffy as you think you should be on the podcast, and you tell yourself that you're going to sound stupid and inarticulate, and that your statement about diagnostic labels are meaningless labels, that's what you said, and you got shocked that you said that. You thought, this is an overgeneralization, and that David sometimes asks questions I don't know a lot of answers to, and I sound like an idiot, and so forth, and that these thoughts are really like stabbing yourself with a sharp knife, and at the time it seems very real. And even though you've listened to the podcast, and I sent you quite a bit of the feedback that you spontaneous feedback that we've gotten to your podcast, and I also forgot to tell you our one on mindfulness yesterday. I think we'll have. It looks like it'll have the highest one day listenership of all time of any of our podcasts. It's getting up towards 6,000 in the first day.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Downloads. But that it feels tremendously real to you and tremendously painful. And then how long does this pain stay with you? Is it like for a minute or two, or an hour or two, or days at a time, or?
It probably stayed with me about 24 hours.
24 hours.
And then, it's still with me a little, and then it kind of tapered off until I listened to the podcasts a couple more times.
Yeah, and this has been all your life that you've had this from time to time?
Yeah, I grew up with a kind of emotionally abusive father.
Yeah.
I think you know a little bit about my family background. One of his favorite things to say to me and my brother and sister when we were growing up was, if we were talking about something, he'd say things like, well, who do you think you are? You're no one. And later on when I was an adult, he told me that he made all those really negative, critical comments because he thought that would make us stronger instead of weaker. Like we would fight back against his negative comments to prove that they were wrong. But that's sort of like, who do you think you are? You're no one. Kind of
seemed real to you.
Seemed really real, and it kind of sits in the middle of my gut every once in a while. Kind of pops up.
Yeah. Painful. Then when you think back on those experiences, do you feel sad or angry?
Yeah,
or?
I feel sad and angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of lonely.
And lonely too.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now? Talking about this.
I feel kind of sad. I feel sad and real anxious. It's hard to talk about.
Tell me why it's hard to talk about, and tell me about the sadness and anxiety you're feeling.
Well, it's hard to talk about because it's, I don't want that to affect me anymore. I feel like I've lived a whole life, and I'm not in my 20s. Why does it? I feel kind of embarrassed that that's still bothering me and affecting me. Like I should get over that already.
Could we add that as another negative thought? You want another, or you could just.
I'll just put it at the bottom.
Yeah. And so what is it again? I should.
I should be over
this by now.
This by now.
Yeah, I should be over this by now, and that's another 100% when it pops into your mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel sad because I imagine this little girl growing up, like trying to assert herself into the world and saying things at the dinner table about whatever we were talking about and being shut down. Like, you're no one.
Yeah, sad. Do you think that has to do with your choice of career, being a champion for women and for children?
I do think so, yep. Yes.
So we have to see if we can be a champion for that little girl today.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
How am I doing in terms of empathy?
I think you're doing great.
Mm-hmm. Would you give me an A, a B, a C?
I would give you an A.
Okay, why?
Well, I think because you're asking me how I'm feeling, and you're asking me to explain why I'm feeling that, and so you're giving me the opportunity to talk about, things in the past that have made me sad and how it's affecting me currently still.
And how does it feel to you to be talking about it? You said you feel very anxious right now.
Mm-hmm. How does it feel to be anxious?
Well, yeah. Or are you feeling David is judging me, or the people listening are judging me, or?
No. Am I feeling? Maybe a little, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what kind of a terrible family did I come from?
What kind of,
Like, what kind of, like, people might be thinking, what kind of terrible family did she come from?
Oh, okay. And you think maybe I'm thinking that, or more the listeners? Or?
Yeah, you're probably thinking it too. Everyone's thinking it.
And then what else would I be thinking? She comes from a terrible family. What else?
She's broken.
I just meant more on the distorted side.
She's broken.
Okay, she's broken.
Like, even when you said that's why I chose the field I went into, there's a part of it that feels like there was, like, I had no choice. Like, I was on a certain path from the very beginning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And part of it is a conscious choice.
Yeah. Sure. But there's a part of you right now that's still feeling kind of broken and not good enough.
Yeah.
Right now you're feeling that.
Yes.
And then you're feeling maybe that I'm judging you.
Well, if you're thinking I'm flawed or broken,
then what?
Then you are judging me. Yeah.
Yeah, and then.
Yeah, you're judging me that I'm flawed and broken, and I came from this crazy family, and.
And then I would be. I mean, suppose David was judging someone else. How would you feel toward David?
I'd be kind of irritated.
Mm-hmm. Are you feeling a little irritated with me?
Well, kind of, yes.
Tell me about that. Go ahead.
Well, it doesn't feel good to be judged. I don't want you to judge me, but I'm more worried about, living up to your expectations of me.
You can add, did you add these?
Yeah.
She's broken, David is judging me, I might not live up to his expectations.
Well, I'm not living up to your expectations.
Oh, I'm not. Okay. I'm not living up to his expectations. And so what kind of fellow is David?
Oh,
Huh?
he's a judge. But now we're doing the interpersonal downward arrow. Well, he's, if you're judging me, you're kind of harsh.
Yeah, since we're going to do an interpersonal downward arrow,
We might as well do it.
We can do it fast, but
Yep.
it seems really, really important. It seems like an important part of this.
But I think you're a stand-in for, like, the hypothetical any person.
The hypothetical what?
Any person.
Yeah. Oh, I just have one left. I gave them out at a group the other night.
Well, we can just work on scratch paper.
Well, I'll just do it here. You can do yours on there. And so in the upper right, there are 4 compartments here, and I'll try to put this on the show notes too. But the upper right-hand compartment is, what does this tell you about the kind of person he or she is? In other words, David. And then the upper left-hand is, what does this tell me about my role in the relationship? Rhonda, my role. What kind of person am I? And the lower left compartment is, how would this kind of relationship feel? And the lower right would be, what are the rules that link the roles? This is called the rules and the roles. So let's look at David's role in the relationship in the upper right-hand compartment. So what are the words that describe David? I think you said judgmental.
Judgmental.
Mm-hmm. What else?
Harsh.
Harsh.
But I know that that's not true, so it seems...
But
if you're judging me, harsh.
Mm-hmm.
Critical.
Mm-hmm.
Unforgiving.
Unforgiving. Powerful.
Powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Condescending.
Mm-hmm. Superior.
Superior.
Anything else? That's a pretty good list. Now, what is my role?
My role?
What words describe me, Rhonda? What's my role in the relationship?
Goofy.
Mm-hmm.
Distracting. Inferior.
Mm-hmm. Weak.
Weak.
Flawed.
Flawed. Undereducated.
Mm-hmm.
Fraudulent.
Yeah. I just thought about one good thing about being fraudulent.
What is that?
At least you can fool some people. Because you can have all of this without, being fraudulent.
No, maybe that'll go in my my positive reframe.
Yeah. And we laugh about it, but it's real. And a lot of people listening, I'll bet most people listening to this podcast right now have this system going of social anxiety and fearing not being good enough at whether you're a therapist or a patient or a general public person. It's incredibly common, at least in my experience. Everyone in our Tuesday group, just I would say almost 100% of the people feel like this from time to time. And anything else that describes your role?
Well, I can, no.
Worthless?
Worthless.
We got inferior. Maybe we don't need worthless.
Yeah, let's not put down worthless. I don't think I'm worthless.
Now, what were the emotions? How would weak, goofy, fraudulent, distracting, inferior, flawed, undereducated me feel in relating to judgmental, condescending, superior, harsh, critical, unforgiving, powerful you?
Really sad.
Mm-hmm.
Anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Worried.
Sure. Ashamed?
Ashamed. I mean, worried can go into panicking, panicked. Incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a feeling?
Hmm?
Is that a feeling?
Yeah.
Incompetent?
How about angry?
Angry.
Hidden anger?
Yeah, hidden anger. Embarrassed.
Oh, yeah. How about alone?
Alone.
Lonely?
Lonely.
And then the lower right-hand compartment is what are the rules that connect these roles? What rules does Rhonda have to follow to relate to David and the many others who are like David?
She has to over-prepare everything so that she never has to fail.
Yeah, over-prepare, never fail. How about try to impress?
Try to impress.
Hide errors?
Hide errors as much as possible.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
I don't think we need to edit out a sneeze.
Okay. So over-prepare, never fail, try to impress, hide errors,
What other rules?
puff myself up.
Uh-huh. How about be unassertive?
Be unassertive.
Unassertive, yeah.
Right, yep.
Unassertive. And do not criticize or challenge.
Yep, okay.
And is act phony ever a part of it?
Yes.
Because I can't share my feelings, right?
Right.
And there could be some other rules as well, but does this seem accurate?
This seems accurate.
And it goes on in this relationship. Does it go on in other relationships as well?
Well, probably, because there's nothing just in one relationship.
Nothing what?
I don't think there's anything that's only in one relationship, so
Yeah.
probably.
So that's just another way of looking at what's under the surface. So and this goes back to our podcast on fractal psychotherapy. Everything is contained in just that one moment of hearing yourself say something you thought was incorrect about diagnoses, being overly critical of diagnoses as being irrational or meaningless, I guess was the word, and that like all of the past and all of the current issues can be encapsulated just in what you were thinking and feeling at that one moment. And how am I doing on empathy now?
Well, I think you're doing pretty good at understanding me, but I feel worse now than I did when we first started.
Well, let's talk about that and what. Tell me about your feeling.
Well, identifying out my role in being inferior, thinking of myself as inferior and undereducated and fraudulent, and identifying these really challenging feelings and the rules between us or the rules between other people. It's painful.
Oh, it's painful in what way? I'm glad you said that because I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't told me that just now. What?
Oh, you wouldn't have known that?
No, because your persona is always very smooth and articulate and poised and funny and that.
Well, yeah, it just feels sad to think of myself in these really negative ways. And actually, I starting to do these podcasts, I experience you as really generous and kind. And so to think that there's a part of me that thinks you're also harsh and critical, it's like embarrassing and sad.
Yeah. It's hard for me too because a lot of people think of me this way, because I'm the leader of our group to a certain extent and have a bit of a high profile, and so people are often thinking of me as some ogre that they can't open up with, and because I'll step on them or crunch them or be critical of them, or this type of thing. I'm not complaining about it, but it's hard for me too. Kind of, wherever you are in life, things go with the territory. But it's frustrating and sometimes annoying too.
It's kind of a burden.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. It is. But as I say, it's not like some horrible. I'm not like crying in my beer or something like that.
Right, and it seems like, like the fractal psychotherapy that we talked about before, and the specificities. I mean, it seems like this is encapsulated in that 5 minutes, but this isn't all of who I think I am, or all of who I think you are, or it's not. This isn't all of our relationship. This was just in that one moment.
This is the little fractal, the little slice of your life where all of your problems are encapsulated,
right.
not all of yourself or all of your personality, all of who you are, not all of how you feel and what you do, but the problems, you might have other problems besides this one, but most of the people I work with, it's just this one. Did you also feel down because you're revealing all of this in front of a large audience?
Well, I don't have a concept that I'm revealing it in front of a large audience, but I do feel kind of embarrassed that I'm really revealing it in front of you. But this isn't the first time we've done personal work, and I've already revealed like the worst secrets of my life to you. So This is like minor compared to that. Sure. Although it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, right. Now, how do you feel having told me that just now?
I feel a little better.
Yeah.
And it feels good to hear your version of it. Like your reaction to it.
Yeah, why?
It feels more of a connection between the two of us.
Yeah, and again, that could be a teaching point, because a lot of us were trained, don't ever use self-disclosure as a therapist.
I was taught that, definitely.
Yeah, and never use an I feel statement, and it just seems kind of cruel to me. How can we expect our clients, our patients, to open up? That's what we're asking them to do. Right? Be vulnerable and open up, be real, all the while hiding our own feelings. It just seems so phony. Yet that's the basis of an awful lot of psychotherapy.
Yeah, but you're expressing your feelings in order to help me, not because you want me to take care of you. You want me to feel sorry for you, or you're not switching the role so that now I'm doing anything to make you feel better.
Yeah.
You're doing that in service to me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. If I started sobbing and say, I'm feeling so awful now, that would,
that would help.
You really hurt my feelings. You really know how to hurt a guy.
Right, that wouldn't help. Either of us.
Well, to keep these bite-sized, but I would suggest that we can call this the end of the first of the two podcasts. What we went right up, we did the testing and the empathy, assuming that the empathy is good enough. And then in our next podcast, we'll go quickly through paradoxical agenda setting, and then we'll do a bunch of methods, identify the distortion, externalization of voices, feared fantasy, acceptance paradox, and all of that good stuff. So thank you, all of you, for listening. Thank you again, Rhonda. Now, for you listeners, I'm not going to wait a week and then continue with Rhonda next week like in a regular therapy session. I believe in doing it all at once whenever you can, have a 2-hour therapy session. So we're just going to stop for a moment, and then we'll pick right up. But when we pick up, it will sound like next week's podcast.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for continuing to listen.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this episode under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. The theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Rhonda Barovsky. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good Podcast.